All right. So welcome to our second webinar as a part of our admitted college admissions webinar series. This one is going to be about BSMD programs. So feel free to put any questions you have during the webinar in the chat box, and we'll be sure to get to those questions at the end of the webinar. All right. So my name is Ayush. Maya actually isn't here today. I will be attending Brown University as a part of the program in liberal medical education, which is a BSMD program by Brown University. And I plan on majoring in computational neuroscience and applied math economics. And I'll be here kind of to talk to you guys about BSMD programs, what they are, and kind of what they look for, and all those things. Just an introduction to the entire thing. So before we dive into BSMD programs, I think it's really important to talk about just a normal education path for a physician, right? So it all starts in undergrad. Everyone has to go and get an undergraduate degree, and that consists of 4 years, a normal 4-year undergraduate degree. And the major doesn't matter. You can major in kind of whatever you want, but you do have to get your pre-med requirements done, which are a set of courses that we'll go over, and have to take the MCAT so that you can apply for medical schools later on. After that, the next step is medical school. So at the end of your undergraduate 4 years, you would apply to medical school and you would attend medical school for another 4 years. And this is really divided up into two-year segments. So the first 2 years are the academic years, per se, where you're really learning textbook knowledge, and you take a exam at the end of those 2 years. And then the last 2 years are really the clinical years where you're rotating with different specialties, figuring out what you want to do for the next 3 to 6 years when you're training. So after the 4 years of medical school, you enter into something called residency, which is where your specialty training occurs. So when people are anesthesiologists or pediatricians or surgeons, this residency is what's kind of splits everyone apart. Because everyone goes through medical school if you're going to become a physician, but to figure out what kind of physician you want to be, you have different residency programs. So based on the specialty, they can range anywhere from 3 to 6 years. Things like family medicine are usually around 3 years, whereas very intensive specialties like neurosurgery would be about 6 years. So at the end of your residency, you've pretty much finished all the mandatory medical education that is there. After that, there is an optional further training called a fellowship, but that is optional based on what you kind of want your career to look like. So let's talk about the undergraduate portion of it, right? So if you're not in a BSMD program, those 4 years of your undergrad, you would be something called a pre-med student, meaning that you're working towards medical school. Now, a common misconception is that it's a certain major in school, but that's actually not the case. The pre-med is not a major, but it's really just a distinction for students, saying that they are working towards a medical career, working towards applying for medical school. It's really a course of study rather than a major. Any major can be considered a pre-med. Everything from biology to engineering to literature, you can really do anything you want in college and still be considered a pre-med. So what are the requirements in like a pre-med education to apply to medical school? So you have to do your pre-med courses, which we'll go over in a bit. And you also have to take the MCAT, which is pretty much the medical college admissions test, which is the test you would take in your 3rd or 4th year of medical school to then apply to medical, 3rd or 4th year of undergrad so you can apply to medical school. So those are the requirements. But other recommendations to be considered for medical school is to have a lot of research experience, to volunteer in many places, shadow physicians and in hospitals, and you have to have a really high GPA because medical school admissions are notoriously tough. About 40% of all applicants get into medical school so it really is a very hard application process. So these are all the things that a pre-med student would be taking into consideration. And along with doing the required courses and taking the MCAT, students are also doing research, volunteering, shadowing physicians, and also trying to keep their GPA as high as possible. So what does the BSMD program do, right? So how does the BSMD program change the education path? So BSMD programs allow you to kind of combine your first 4 years of undergrad and your 4 years of medical school into a 6 to 8 year program. So what colleges can do is pretty much already admit you into their medical school and say, hey, you're coming into undergrad and you're already admitted into our medical school. So kind of what changes here? So in your undergraduate, as you can see, your major still doesn't matter. You still probably have to do some pre-med requirements. Sometimes you have to take the MCAT, but then your medical school is pretty much the same. Now this changes based on what program you're going to, and we'll look into how these things can change. But your residency is pretty much the same. Once you graduate from medical school, you're pretty much in the same boat as everyone else that went to medical school. So what is the kind of structure of BSMD programs? Every BSMD program is different. The main differences kind of fall into these 4 categories. First is prereq courses. So sometimes you have to take all the prerequisite courses that a normal pre-med would have to do, and sometimes you only have to do some of them. The second difference is duration. Some BSMD programs are only 6 years, and some are 8 years. And this is a big one that students often consider because, as we see from this timeline, to become a physician is a really long process. It takes years and years of education, and those 2 years saved from a 6-year BSMD program is something that students sometimes really like because they want to be done with their education sooner than later. So the third is the education structure. And by this, I mean, kind of what is the 6 years or 8 years going to look like? Are you going to have a normal undergraduate experience, or are you going to have some kind of combined thing? And this really varies mostly by the duration. So in a 6-year program, you're really not going to have a normal undergraduate experience. You're going to be pretty much starting your medical school in your first year. You're going to be taking some med school courses from the get-go. But an 8-year would pretty much be like any normal pre-med and medical school. Your first 4 years would be undergraduate, and your last 4 years would be medical school. And the last big difference is taking the MCAT versus not taking the MCAT. Some programs still make you take the MCAT, and some of them say you don't have to take the MCAT. So let's kind of look at that pre-med course requirements and MCATs and how they relate to BSMD programs. So a conventional pre-med student outside of a BSMD program would have to take all of these courses. So they would have to take 2 semesters of biology, 1 semester of biochemistry, 2 semesters of inorganic chemistry, and so on. And AP credits are often not taken. So let's say you have taken AP biology and gotten a 4 or a 5, and the university that you would want to attend takes that credit. Med schools will actually not count that towards your pre-med requirements. They'll say, oh, you have your AP credit coming in for intro bio. Now you have to take a 3rd biology class to kind of make up for it. So you have to take these no matter what. AP credits are often not taken. Some of them may, but the majority don't take AP credits. And you also have to take your MCAT as a normal pre-med student. So at the end of the day, you would have to take your MCAT and take about 14 to 16 pre-med required classes. And to put that into perspective, usually students do about 32 classes in college to satisfy their major requirements and everything else. So this is a very large chunk of a normal undergraduate experience. It's almost half your classes specifically kind of scheduled towards requiring pre-med requirements. So let's take another BSMD program to kind of compare how it all pans out. So we're going to be looking at the Brown University PLME program because I'm the most familiar with that one. So for Brown University, you can see the requirements kind of lined out right there. And this in and of itself is actually much shorter than a normal pre-med requirements. It's almost cut down by about 30%, 30 to 40%. And on top of that, Brown gives you AP credit for some of their courses. So your 14 to 16 classes that you would have to take as a normal pre-med really gets cut down to about 5 to 8. So effectively, you're cutting it down almost 50%. And they take AP credit. So you can really get a bunch of classes knocked away. And on top of that, you don't have to take the MCAT. So you can focus till your 4 years of undergrad on kind of different subjects, which is kind of one of the main drivers towards this program over others. But every program has their own niches. Every program has kind of what type of student that they like to interact with. As I was saying, 6-year programs really attract people that want to get done with medical school fast, whereas a program like Brown University, where the PLME program at Brown University, they have much lower pre-med requirements, so kids that really want to explore other interests like PLME. So let's talk about the other kind of differences between BSMD programs, and that's the duration versus and the education structure. So in a conventional pre-med track, your bachelor's degree would take anywhere from 4 to 5 years, and this is because some, a normal education and bachelor's degree would be about 4 years, but some engineering majors have a tougher time to get done with their bachelor's degree in 4 years, and sometimes they take 5, because for an engineering or math major with pre-med requirements, it's a lot of classes to get through, which is totally fine, but it's just how they have chosen to structure their education. And on top of that, a lot of pre-med students take gap years to really strengthen their application for medical school. This is usually done to study for the MCAT more to get a higher score, or do some research, do some internships, do some shadowing, do some volunteering to really increase their chances of getting into good medical school by strengthening their resume. So that's anywhere from 0 to 3 years. Medical school is 4 years. So that's looking at a duration of about 8 to 12 years. And over the years, the number of people taking gap years and the length and the number of years that gap year section takes up is slowly increasing. So according to the AAMC, which is kind of a body that controls admissions and all that stuff, has data that shows that about 65% of enrolling medical school students took 1 or more gap year. So the majority of students are taking gap years, and the average amount of gap years is about 1.5. So really nowadays, people are really taking 1.5 to 2 gap years to really strengthen their resume before medical school. So about 8 to 12 years is what people are looking at when looking at a conventional pre-med track, and that's before residency. So for an 8-year program, your bachelor's degree would be 4 years. Most of them allow you to take gap years if you want, to explore your interests, to maybe pick up a job and kind of gain experiences. And you can usually take about 1 gap year, 1 to 2 gap years, but usually people just take 0, so it's 0 to 1. And medical schools is, again, just 4 years. So you're looking at about 8 to 9 years for a 8-year program. And the reason for this is because, the program guarantees admission into a medical school, and sometimes there's a lack of your MCAT requirements, which reduces really the number of years needed to get through the entire process. But there are some 8-year programs that still require the MCAT, which may have kids taking gap years to kind of study up for that. So you're really looking at about 8 to 9 years for that. So the last type of education structure is a 6 or 7-year program. And in this case, there's really no separation between the bachelor's degree and medical school. So your bachelor's degree and medical school are actually spread out over 6 to 7 years. So one good example of this is UMKC, their 6-year program. So in your first 2 years, 75% of your time will be spent on undergraduate studies, and 25% of it will be on medical studies. And then your years 2 to 6, 80% of it is medical, and 20% of it is undergrad. And one important consideration for this type of program is the fact that it's not a conventional studying schedule. So you don't usually have a summer break or the normal breaks that most people have. In UMKC's, as for UMKC's example, you don't really have a summer break at all. You have a 4-week summer kind of break, if you want to call it, but you're pretty much part of the academic year throughout your 6 years. There's really no distinction between freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. There are no big breaks. And that's how they're able to do a 6-year program, because what they're really doing is they're shoving 8 years into 6 years. They're not cutting anything out. So that is a big thing that people need to take into consideration when looking at a 6 or 7-year program. They're really not decreasing any of the work. They're just making you do it faster. All right, so the application process. How do you apply for BSMD programs? And what does it entail? So it's really very similar to a normal application process. So first you'd go into your Common App or Coalition application based on the college and fill out just a normal Common App and how it is, and we can help you with that. And then you would do your university supplemental essays. So for example, a college like Brown has just normal supplements because the Common App has essays that you need to do. And then Brown University has their own specific essays they want you to do. And then the third step is to do the BSMD supplemental essays. So on top of the essays you've already done, you need to probably write out one to three more essays just about why you want to be part of the BSMD program and what would make you good for it. And on top of that, you would need to find undergraduate application recommendation letters. So this is the normal recommendation letters you would be getting for just applying to colleges, probably from your teachers. And then what the BSMD programs want is they want additional recommendation letters that kind of speaks towards that interest of yours. So this would be kind of someone that can speak on behalf of why you want to go into medicine and that kind of thing. And at the end, there's an interview where you meet with someone and they interview you to kind of get a better feel for who you are, what you want to do, and kind of make it so that the admissions committee can get to know you as a person, because at the end of the day, they're admitting people, not just statistics. So they want to get to know you as a person. So that's what this interview kind of does. And the last step for some programs, and this is not for all, are on-site visits and activities. So a program kind of like WashU, Washington University has a 8-year program called the Medical Scholars Program, I believe. They actually invite their finalists to Washington University where they kind of interact, mingle, and that's kind of like your final interview. They kind of have you over, ask questions, let you participate in activities with your kind of finalist buddies or kind of peers, and then based on that, they make their final decision. But that's only for some programs. For example, Brown University's PLME program does not have an on-site visit or any type of activities like that. So they never actually bring you to campus as a part of the admissions process. All right, so that kind of concludes our formal introduction to the BSMD programs. We had some previously asked questions that we can kind of get into now. So the first question that we got from our forums was, what do BSMD programs value highly in applications, and what can make an applicant unique? So this is one of those questions that is really hard to answer. That's kind of like asking, what do admissions programs, like what do they look for in the admissions process? Like there's no single answer. But I can say that for BSMD programs, it's a lot more straightforward. In normal undergraduate admissions, they'll be like, oh, we're trying to look for a holistic person. We do holistic admissions. Scores don't matter. Activities don't matter. And it's just kind of hard to understand. But for BSMD, it's actually pretty straightforward. What they're trying to look for is a student that they think will do well in their medical school and in their undergraduate program, because they're committing to you for 6 to 8 years. That's much longer than just a normal 4 years. So they want to make sure that, one, you'll be a good fit for their programs, and they want to make sure that you'll fit in to their university for 8 years, and you have what it takes to become a physician. And that's the key part. Medical school admissions is tough. And BSMD programs, their admissions is also just as tough, because they're not making any kind of, they're not making it any easier for you. You're pretty much applying for medical school as an 18-year-old. So that's why the admission rates are so low for these programs, because it's really hard to find, teenagers that the admissions council, like the admissions committee would be like, yeah, this person is ready for medical school. So what they really value highly is great academic performance. They really want to know that you have done really well in high school and hope that those numbers can kind of translate into good medical school performance. They want to see that you want to become a physician. And because a lot of times in high school, it can be hard for students to commit to a really long time. And since they haven't had much time to think about their careers, they really want to make sure that the students they take are committed to becoming doctors. And this can show in your activities and kind of the volunteering you've done. And it really can come in any way, shape, or form. They just need to see activities and or reasoning and or essays that show that you really want to become a physician. The last one is just experience. Like you say you want to become a physician, but have you pursued it? Have you gotten experience with it? And that's really the last part, just the experience. And the part about making an applicant unique, everyone's already unique. They've all done their own types of activities, all wrote their own essays. You just have to hope that your activities and your drive and your essays are good enough to make them look at you. Because everyone is trying to be unique to the point where really there's no way you can really be unique from everyone else, because everyone is trying to be unique. All right, so the next question was, what BSMD programs are easiest to get into if willing to go anywhere in the country? There really aren't any easiest BSMD programs to get into. And most of them have admissions rates kind of below the 5% mark. Some of them are around the 10-ish percentage mark. But they're just kind of all over the place. There is one from Augusta, which is local. There's one in Florida, I believe. You just have to go and look for them. There are so many in the country. I believe there are almost 100 combined programs in the country, and not all of them really publish any stats. So it's really up to you to do your research. But I feel like looking for the ones that are easiest to get into isn't always the best approach. It should really be more like, which program speaks to me the best? Is it a 6-year program? Is it an 8-year program? Do I want to commit to this area for 6 to 8 years? Those kind of things. And just apply to as many as you can, because rather than applying to the easiest ones, it's always important to apply to a lot. And you'll probably apply to an easy one on the way. All right, so I think we had a few questions in the chat. Give me 1 second. All right, so one of the questions we had was, for the why medicine essay, what would be the best reasons to cite for going into medicine? I've heard that there's some cliche responses, like I want to help people. Okay, so there really aren't any cliche responses, because you just have to be genuine. And I know that for my essay, I took a very similar approach with that cliche response. It's for physicians, I mean, the reason that you're committing to such a long kind of education path is that you really do want to help people. And that is a genuine passion. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to be sure that your essay really reflects who you are. They want to know that you're genuine about it. That why medicine essay isn't meant to kind of trick people into writing really weird essays and kind of be the most special type of person. It's just a tool that they use to see what are your motivations to becoming a physician. That why medicine really has no kind of yield on the admissions process other than them trying to get to know why. Like, you as an 18-year-old are committing to 8 years of education, and a career path is going to take a lot longer to even get a job at the end. So they just want to get to know what you want. All right, so the second question was, does the lack of research or publications lower my chances of getting in? I had research, but it got canceled because of COVID-19. Yes and no. So everyone is affected by COVID-19. Pretty much all research, in-person research, has gotten canceled this past, this summer. And that affects everyone equally, at least for high schoolers, because professors are more focused on kind of getting their own lab together than graduate students, more than high school interns. So for senior year, that kind of affects everyone the same. And colleges know that. BSMD admissions programs, they know that. But for the kind of past years, kind of what did you do in your freshman, sophomore, junior year? And are there, applicants this coming season that have done research before their senior year? Yes, there have been. I'm sure there are many across the country that have done research before their senior year. And I don't want to say lower your chances, because not everyone wants to go become an academic doctor. Not everyone wants to go become a researcher. But it's really more of a holistic thing. So just because you don't have research, it won't lower your chances, but if that's the only thing you've done that is medical related, kind of you haven't, people, if a student hasn't done any hospital volunteering or any physician shadowing or any type of medical involvement, that may hurt your chances a little bit. And I say a little bit because, you still have your essays, you still have your academic merit, and you still have all those things that they consider. And your interview is important as well. Right. So next question was, how many BSMD programs would you suggest applying to, and how many normal undergraduate programs? So this comes down to what you're trying to get out of your education. Me personally, I only applied to 2 BSMD programs, and they're pretty much 2 of the ones that are kind of the hardest to get into. And the reason I did that was mainly because I wasn't looking at BSMD programs as a viable, as something that I really wanted to do. I've always known that I wanted to become a physician, but I was also really kind of focused on developing skills outside of medicine before I go into medicine. Kind of do some kind of engineering, or go and learn some finance and economics or applied math or something like that, so I can bring back a new perspective when I go into medicine later. And none of the 6, 7, and even some of the 8-year programs, they weren't giving me the chance to do this. So for me, I was actually applied to almost 12 normal undergraduate programs and only applied to 1 or 2 BSMD programs, Brown being one of them, because they gave me that chance to kind of explore different things. So that was kind of my experience. But some students, they don't care about, developing other skills. They just want to become a doctor, and they're really passionate about becoming a doctor. And there's nothing wrong with that. So for them, they apply to pretty much only BSMD programs. Now, see, those are 2 kind of extremes of interests, right? One is specifically only interested in becoming a doctor, nothing wrong with that. So they're only applying to BSMD programs. And kind of the other extreme is kind of, don't really care about guaranteeing medical school, but just wants to delve into different things before they come back to medicine. And, that kind of embodies me, like only applying to one or 2 BSMD programs, everything else normal undergraduate. And it just depends on kind of what you're looking for in your education in the kind of middle. So are you okay with kind of committing and doing 6 years and not really having a break and just doing just medicine education for 6 years? Or, kind of where do you fall on that? But I would recommend in total, you should be applying, especially if you're doing BSMD programs as well, at least 10 different places. So like 10 to 15. So that could be all BSMD. That could be kind of all undergraduate and 1 BSMD, or a mix. But you should be aiming for about 10 to 15. And based on kind of what you're interested in, like a healthy mix of both. Because BSMD programs are very difficult to get into. And kind of no matter what your scores are, what your experiences are, you could be the smartest person, you could be the most deserving person in the entire nation, but you might not get into a BSMD program just because the admissions process is not perfect. So you should always be applying to safety schools, a healthy mix of undergraduate and BSMD, because normal undergraduate admissions is much, much easier than BSMD programs, and that's just kind of in the stats. For example, the Rice-Baylor BSMD program take only 6 kids a year, and they have an admissions rate of less than 1%. Brown is about 3.5%, and for comparison, just getting to Harvard is 4.5 or 5%. So having a healthy mix so that you're guaranteed a undergraduate education at the end is the best. And then how many of kind of what you apply for is just up to you based on kind of what your philosophy in your education is. So last question is, what tips would you give for our application, especially our essays? My tips are kind of cliche, but it worked for me. So I'll just give it out, is the fact that just be genuine and don't worry that much about making yourself unique, because everyone is inherently unique because everyone has done different things. But just be sure that you are getting out who you really are as a person and why you want to go into medical school. And admissions, I feel like admissions committees really enjoy that. They kind of can read through people being, I don't want to say fake, but kind of trying to pretend like they are, like someone they aren't. And that's a very common thing in the admissions process is students will try to pretend like they're a certain type of person that they think the admissions committee will like. But half the time, they've been doing this for years, they can kind of read through that. So the important part is being genuine and really putting your feelings, your passions, your self on that essay and showing them that, hey, I really like this program. I think I would do well in this program, and this is why I want to come. And if you can get that out there, really that's the best thing you can do to increase your chances. Because more than any activities or any accomplishments or any awards or any scores, they're admitting an individual. And even they know that students, like even students that don't have perfect scores or 15 research papers or like no hospital kind of involvement, even they can be some of the most deserving students. And they know that. And what they're looking for is someone genuine in their interest of getting into a certain BSMD program or really any undergraduate program. So the best thing you can do is just be genuine and put your best foot forward so that they can get to know you as a person through the essays that you write. I hope that answered your question. But yeah, so in the last few minutes that we have, I want to go through kind of what kind of private counseling, what can we help you with, right? So we have a bunch of different packages that we can help you with through this admissions process where we can kind of work one-on-one with you guys and really show you guys how to get through the process, how to increase your chances, how to really be genuine, as I was saying. So we have an essay writing package where we kind of help you brainstorm essay topics and we revise your essays and we help you through kind of a lot of the essays that you might come across. We have the application creation package where we help you fill out the Common App, kind of make the most of the limited amount of space that's there. We help you brainstorm how to organize activities, how to put down scores, what scores would be good to send, what scores may not be good to send, all of those kind of weird detailed stuff that we kind of learned the hard way while going through it. And our other package is the BSMD writing package, which probably people watching this would be interested in, is where it's pretty much the same as the essay writing package, but it's specifically for BSMD supplements and kind of filling out those essays as a BSMD student. We have interview preps, which are kind of 1-hour sessions where we kind of prep you guys to do well in your interviews, kind of what you should be talking about, some talking points, how to make sure the interviewer is interested in you and kind of remembers you afterwards. And then our final two packages are kind of the complete packages. So we have a complete package for normal undergraduate admissions, and we have a complete package for BSMD admissions. And sorry, I'm going a little bit fast, but we're about to run out of time. But basically the complete package, we give you all of these things. We help create a college list for you guys. We give you individualized Google Calendar tasks so you guys can stay on top of everything. We help plan out your extracurriculars and how you should put it in your Common App, help you get letters of recommendation, when you should be asking, who you should be asking, kind of essay writing package to help you with your essays, application creation package to fill out your Common App. We can help you fill out your Common App with you. We have 2 interview prep sessions, so we can help you get prepped with your interviews before you go into them. You can kind of use those same things we talk about in all of your interviews. We also help you with financial aid and scholarship guidance because a lot of these universities are expensive, and especially with BSMD, you're committing to 8 years of education, and that's really expensive. So financial aid and scholarship guidance is really helpful in the long run so that you guys are left with less loans and less of a financial burden from this education, which is really important. And our BSMD complete package is pretty much the same thing, but we help you start pre-med education planning just in case you guys end up at a normal undergraduate university, because the process is hard for getting into medical school. So the earlier you start, the better. And everything else is just kind of BSMD focused. So like finding good BSMD programs, extracurriculars for BSMDs, and BSMD essays, and so on. So thank you guys for joining. The steps you guys can take now is really just defining your priorities and your criteria. What do you want in a college? And looking into private counseling and see what options you may have, and really just exploring and taking it easy. It's summer, so just take the time to think and prepare yourself for senior year. and just take it easy. So thank you guys for joining. You guys can contact us at this email, and our website is admitted.weebly.com, and you can contact us from there too. Thank you all for joining, and I look forward to seeing you guys at the next webinar that we're having on Monday about Georgia colleges and kind of what Georgia has to offer in their universities. All right, so